That morning, the pot of pap on the fire burnt black before I even knew what was happening. The smoke rose like a warning and my heart started beating fast. Her slippers were not by the door. Her wrapper was not hanging where she always left it. I called her name from the kitchen to the bedroom, from the bedroom to the backyard. No answer. The bed was empty, the pillow cold. I ran outside and the whole compound was still quiet, except for the sound of that pap burning. That was the day Mama Bisi walked out of my life without saying a single word. Before that day, our house looked normal to everybody. People in the street used to greet us like we were the best couple in the world. Some even told their children to learn from us. Every morning she would fry a kara and pour pap for people by the gate while I got ready for work. We laughed sometimes, but not the kind of laughter that comes from the heart. It was the type that hides something. At night, when we lay down, I would turn to face the wall. She would stay awake, quiet, sometimes whispering something under her breath that I could never hear clearly. I thought that was how marriage was meant to be. Two people just living and managing each other. I never raised my hand on her. I never went after another woman. I gave her food, clothes, and everything she asked for. I thought that was enough. I didn't know I was starving her of something that had no name. When she left, the whole street turned to a market of gossip. Some said I cheated. Some said I chased her away because I found a younger woman. One even said I beat her in secret. I just sat outside, watching them whisper, drinking my gari dry. I didn't know how to explain that sometimes a person can do everything right and still be wrong. That night, I slept alone for the first time in 20 years. The room felt too wide, the bed too big. The smell of her cream was still in the air. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, waiting for her to come back, but she never did. The next morning, when I opened the door, the flowers she planted by the gate had started to bend, thirsty for water. I picked up the bucket and began to pour water slowly on them. That was when I noticed something on the ground beside the flowers. Her old wrapper, the one with small yellow stars, was folded neatly and left by the corner. I bent down, touched it, and my chest tightened. It was not a mistake. She didn't forget it. She left it there so I would see it. Like a sign. Like a goodbye I was too blind to understand. And as I stood there, holding that wrapper, I started to think of all the days I saw her eyes begging for something I couldn't give. Not money, not food, just to be seen, to be heard. But I never looked deep enough. I was too busy being a good husband. The news of her leaving spread faster than Harmattan fire. By afternoon, women in the street were already talking in groups, pretending to sweep while watching me from the corner of their eyes. Children whispered when I passed. Even our landlord came to knock, asking if we had a small quarrel. I just told him she went to visit her sister. But deep down, I knew that visit was one she might never return from. For 2 weeks I tried to live as if nothing had changed. I still woke up early, watered her flowers, and boiled water for pap that nobody would drink. I kept her cup beside mine on the table. I even ironed her wrapper once before I remembered she was gone. The silence in the house was heavy like thick smoke. Every sound echoed. Even the tick of the wall clock sounded like a heartbeat. People started giving advice I didn't ask for. One neighbor said I should go to her family and beg, even if I didn't do anything wrong. Another one said I should find another woman quickly before she comes back to meet me happy. I listened, but I didn't move. I didn't know what to beg for. I didn't even know the reason she left. Then one evening, as I sat outside, our son Bisi came home from school. His face carried anger and confusion. He stood by the door, looking around the house like he didn't recognize it anymore. He asked where his mother was. I told him she went to her sister's place. He said people in the street were saying I chased her out. His voice broke when he asked why I would do that. I looked at my son and felt my heart sink. I told him I didn't chase her, that sometimes even a man who never lifts his hand can still make his wife tired. He didn't understand, and maybe I didn't too. He shook his head and went inside. Later that night, I heard him crying softly in his mother's room. I wanted to go in and hold him, but I couldn't. I felt like a thief in my own house. After 2 days, he told me he was going to find her. He didn't wait for my answer. He packed his small bag and left. I watched him walk down the street, his shoulders shaking, and something inside me broke again. That night I sat outside alone. The sky was dark and the flowers looked dry again. I poured water on them until the bucket was empty. The water ran through the sand, carrying small pieces of dry leaves away. I didn't know it then, but that was the same way she had left, slowly, quietly, without looking back, taking pieces of my life along with her. The house stayed empty for many days after Bisi left. I began to talk to myself just to hear a voice in the room. Morning came and went like shadow. The smell of burnt pap still hung in the air, no matter how many times I scrubbed the pot. Sometimes I sat in front of the mirror, trying to see what she used to look at when she saw me. I searched my own face for what could have made her tired. A week later, Bisi called. His voice was calm but heavy. He said he found her in Isiyin, living with her younger sister. He said she was fine, teaching small children how to read and helping them with songs. He said she looked happy. Those words cut me deep, not because she was happy, but because she could find peace somewhere that wasn't beside me. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept turning on the bed, thinking of our early years. The first time I saw her at Bodija Market, carrying tomatoes and laughing so loud that people turned to look. I remembered how I promised her that she would never suffer, and I kept that promise, or so I thought. But I also remembered how, over the years, her laughter changed. It became small, like something trapped in her throat. I started to see the years in my head like pictures. The times I talked over her when she tried to suggest something, the way I used to tell her what was best without asking what she wanted. The many times she said she was tired, and I replied that women are always tired. I thought I was being a man. I didn't know I was slowly teaching her how to disappear. By morning, I decided to go to Isayin. The road was long and dusty, and my mind refused to rest. When I reached her sister's house, I saw her from afar, sitting under a mango tree with small children gathered around her. She looked free, almost like someone I used to know but lost somewhere in time. When she noticed me, she stood up slowly. The children ran off, and we stood there staring at each other. For a long time, nobody spoke. Her face was calm, not angry, not sad. I wanted to ask her to come home, but my tongue felt heavy. She told me I should sit, so I did. The wind blew small dust around our feet, and I looked down because I couldn't meet her eyes. That moment, I realized something I had never understood before. A person can love you and still decide to walk away, not because they stop loving you, but because staying is slowly killing them. I sat there listening to her talk about how peaceful her new life was, and I knew that peace was something I never gave her. We sat under that mango tree until the sun started to go down. I didn't know how to start talking, and she didn't rush me. She just looked at the children playing far away and smiled faintly. I wanted to ask her if she missed me, but I couldn't bring myself to sound like a man begging for what he had already lost. So I asked her if she was eating well. She nodded and said she was fine. Then she looked at me quietly and said I looked thinner. I laughed a little, but it came out weak. After some silence, I told her I didn't understand why she left without a word. She turned to me and said she had used all her words already. That sentence hit me hard. I remembered the years she had tried to talk, and I didn't listen. She said she didn't leave because I hurt her with my hands, but because my silence and control had become a wall she couldn't climb anymore. She said she stopped talking when she realized her voice was only echoing back to her. I wanted to defend myself, to tell her I did everything I thought was right. I paid school fees, brought food home, built the small shop she always dreamed of. But she shook her head slowly. She said what she wanted wasn't money or gifts. She just wanted to feel like she mattered, like her feelings were not noise to be brushed away. I couldn't look at her after that. She told me about how, after our son left for school, the house became too quiet and her mind too loud. She said she started to feel like she was living with a stranger who wore my face. She cooked, cleaned, smiled, but inside she was fading. One day she woke up and couldn't recognize herself anymore. That was the day she decided to leave. When she finished talking, I didn't know what to say. I just sat there, my hands shaking on my knees. She didn't ask me to leave, but I felt like I should. The air between us was full of truth that burned. I stood up slowly and told her I was sorry. She nodded, but didn't say she forgave me. She only said she hoped I would find peace too. Before I left, she gave me a small book. Inside she had written short notes, things she wanted to say but never did. The first line read, "I didn't want to walk away. I just wanted you to notice I was already gone." I carried that book in my pocket all the way home. The road back to Ibadan felt longer than when I came. The sun had set, but I still saw her face in my mind, calm and sure, like someone who had finally found herself after many years of being lost inside another person's shadow. When I reached home that night, the compound looked like it was holding its breath. The gate creaked the same way it always did, the same sound she used to complain about. I dropped my bag by the chair and sat on the veranda. The flowers she planted had started to dry again, their leaves folding in sadness. I brought out the small book she gave me and opened to another page. Her handwriting was neat, but some of the ink had smudged like tears had touched it. She wrote, "I stayed for years hoping you would ask me what was wrong, not because I wanted pity, but because I wanted to know you still cared." That line made my chest heavy. I closed the book and looked at the window of our room. It was dark, empty, lifeless. I tried to imagine her laughter filling that space again, but it was just silence. I poured water on the flowers, not because I thought it would bring her back, but because it was the only thing I could do to feel close to her. The next day, neighbours came again to ask if she had returned. I told them no. Some shook their heads and whispered that I should have kept her better. I didn't argue. They were right, but not in the way they thought. I kept her body in the house for years, but lost her soul long before she left. Days turned into weeks. I went to work, came back, and sat alone every evening, reading one page from her book at a time. Each page carried small pieces of her pain. She wrote about how she would talk to me and I would nod without really hearing. How she learned to swallow her opinions because she didn't want to start another long silence. She wrote about how she wanted to laugh freely again without feeling watched. One evening, as the sun was setting, I sat outside with that book open on my lap. A small girl passing by stopped and asked why I was always sitting alone. I smiled and told her I was waiting for the flowers to bloom again. She nodded and ran off, and I sat there thinking maybe that was true. Maybe I was waiting for something to bloom again inside me too. When rain finally came that week, I stood under it and let it soak me. I watched the flowers drink deeply and lift their heads again. That was when I understood what she meant when she said peace can also be love. It didn't have to be loud. It could be quiet, patient, slow, like the rain that softens hard ground. Now, every morning I still water those flowers. I talk to them like I never talked to her, and sometimes I feel like she hears me. The house is still empty, but it no longer feels like punishment. It feels like a lesson I will carry till my last day. She walked out, but she left behind something that finally woke me up. The truth that love is not just staying, it is seeing, listening and growing before the silence grows bigger than both of you.